Good evening. I'll call the meeting to order at 7 p.m. This is a special council meeting to look at the draft budget for 2024 and to receive public input from it. We will do a presentation by the CAO and the Director of Corporate Services to introduce the budget, the draft budget, and how it was arrived at. As I say, it's a draft budget. It has not been approved by council, and therefore we're seeking input from the public, and also council will debate it at a later date this month. So without further ado, can I have a motion? We have 5 councillors in attendance and 3 on Zoom. Councillors Warren, Yeo, and Ashmore are zooming in tonight. And I'll look for an adoption of the agenda. Councillor Warren, Councillor Joyce, all in favor? And that's passed. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest on anything on the agenda for this evening? Seeing none, should any arise? Well, Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Mayor. Not a declaration of pecuniary interest, but it's public knowledge that I'm a co-founder of the Community Foundation of Kawartha Lakes, and so I just wanted to make sure I declared that up front. Thank you.
Thank you. Should any pecuniary interests arise during the course of the meeting, advise the chair and we'll deal with it accordingly. Moving on to item 4 on the agenda, it's an overview of the draft 2024 budget for the City of Kawartha Lakes. CAO Ron Taylor, and Mr. Taylor, whenever you're ready.
Great, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much, and through you to council and to the public attendees and those that are tracking online. Thanks for the opportunity. As you mentioned, tonight is really focused on public, on educating on our budgets that we're going into now. We'll be going soon into formal deliberations. We launched the program for the various budgets over the last approximate month actively. So throughout October, there was a couple of meetings that we've had informational. We've released the draft budget in its form online and to you. We've had presentations up to this point from departments. We did an overall overview of budgets and financial planning. We're going to touch on that a little bit again tonight. You've heard already from agencies, boards, and committees that are funded. That was a recent meeting. And so this is the last of a series of those introductory meetings to the budgets. And again, public focused, looking for input and feedback on what is proposed in the draft budget. So thanks for the opportunity. I'll walk through a portion of the presentation, and then the director, Sarah Bukaboom, will round out the 2024 budgets specifically. We have a deep bench with team that has put together these budgets, and it's throughout all departments. I won't recognize all of those individuals tonight. I will note our treasurer, Carolyn Daines, is online as well, and happy to answer any questions collectively as a group, should you have any. So briefly, and again, I recognize that tonight is to hear from the public, so I won't take up a lot of your time tonight, but I do think it's important that there's context that's provided overall in terms of how we do budgets, how we plan financially, and not just for 2024 in this case, but over the long term. And as you can appreciate, although we're very local in feel, we're quite a large municipality, relatively speaking. We have a very large, complex operation, and we deliver a number of services locally. We're going to talk about that a little bit. So I want to touch on the long-term financial plan that we had developed several years ago and ongoing, how that informs and helps with our overall financial planning. Then we'll do just a very brief, broad-based financial overview in Kawartha Lakes. And then the director is going to touch on the draft 2024 budgets. And I'm saying that plural. We're going to have a series of meetings in the next couple of weeks. You'll focus on capital budgets first, then you will get into your operating budgets. Special projects is another budget line, and then we have water and wastewater user rate budgets to manage that particular program as well. And then after that, we'll talk a little bit about next steps, what those dates are upcoming. So let's talk about the long-term financial plan. As I mentioned, this was a document and an exercise, if you will, that we embarked on in 2017. It was sort of our first cut at it, and it was essentially really the first, in my mind, where we started to look at financial planning on a much longer term basis, and really looking at it on a macro basis as well. A lot of moving parts, a lot of different considerations, a lot of different things and priorities locally. And so we wanted to capture in our planning all of those various complexities. It was also by necessity. There was legislation changing how we developed budgets, how budgets were informed, and planning for our assets in particular. We were legislated to provide significant detail on how we were going to manage those assets ongoing. So in 2017, Council adopted the first long-term financial plan, and we've tried to have it consistently look at a 10-year horizon. Obviously, within that horizon, that sort of 3-year is the more immediate planning. I would characterize the 5 to 7 year as more interim, but we want to make sure that we are forecasting to that and then beyond that. Because as you can appreciate, we have annual budgets, we have a lot of assets, we have a lot of services that we're trying to deliver. So in 2022, we did a 5-year update or an overhaul to that particular document, and essentially sort of expanded out as I described. It was very much capital asset-based in its infancy. And when we looked at it just last year, we really wanted to start to look at all of the moving parts, all of the budgets, and add more detail going along with that. So we included items like operating budgets in their entirety, special projects, we looked at staffing, we looked at revenue, debt, and reserves, and how we balance and manage and finance all of our various services. So what is the long-term plan, if you will? It's essentially a playbook. It's a framework. It's a forecast. It really just helps to keep in a lane, to look beyond, look to the future. It's strategic. It looks at what we know, and it looks at some of the trends and making sure that we're trying to be responsive to those forecasts and trends. But one of the other sort of main reasons for it was, and this isn't unique to Kawartha Lakes, this is across the board, budgeting annually was really, it was up and down. There was not a lot of stability in numbers, right? You had needs in a given year, you did your budgets, you then implemented them in the following year. And then you started almost all over again. And what it ended up causing was quite a fluctuation. And so one of the things that we do is try to set targets, try to stabilize, try to smooth out what our budgets are in any given year. And that's obviously based on all of the various pressures, whether it's on the expenditure side or on the revenue. Another thing it does is it highlights or translates legislation, what we must adhere to, what we need to work within. It looks at or informs from those master plans, those other strategies that are put together, looking at long-term more forecasting for service delivery. It provides some context then, once we know sort of where we're heading generally. I think that council can make better, more informed decisions on an annual basis to get to those priorities. Because again, as you can appreciate, a lot of our stuff, a lot of our services are multi-year. They're delivered over those various budget cycles. And then it also allows us, or allows you, to not sort of see in a given sort of time period, but it also has regard for the longer term impacts. So if you're shifting and prioritizing in one area of the business, it reflects that in a future year, we may need to look at other elements of the business and balance accordingly in the long term. And it assumes consistent service levels, but really in essence establishes those base service levels as well, sets the methodology for financial sustainability. So how we're going to manage things, and again, I mentioned things like reserves, how we take on debt, revenue grants that we get from upper levels of government, and forecasting in the future how we can rely on those. And it also, as I mentioned before, I'll say smooths out or tries to look at ratepayer affordability so that you're not in any given year sort of in a crisis where you're looking at double-digit tax increases. You want to make sure that we're trying to stay with the cost of living generally, and that we're running the business sort of at the true costs that are needed. So I won't go into a lot of detail on the goals of the long-term financial plan. It is available online. You can certainly review it in its detail. But I mentioned early on that we're not just a small sort of operation. We have quite large budgets. We are a single-tier municipality, and that's important distinction in that we are obligated to deliver all of the legislated and required municipal services. So we don't split with an upper or lower tier or a county and a lower township. And we have a lot of assets. We have assets that value about $4 billion in replacement. And that's everything from roads to, to bridges, to water plants, to buildings and facilities, property, and everything in between. And so it's a lofty sort of objective to manage and maintain all of those assets in the best conditions. And so obviously we're in for the long game. We have to plan for those with a longer view in mind. One of the things that we are looking to do or advancing certainly in this year, but as part of the long-term financial plan, is addressing our backlog of deferred capital needs. So again, when you look at a portfolio valued at $4 billion, we have to look at life cycles of those assets, and we have to, in an affordable manner, invest back best in any given calendar year. Right now, if you looked at sort of our overall portfolio mix, and based on that value of assets, we're probably investing back the equivalent of about 1.3, 1.4% in renewing and refreshing and maintaining that capital to the total portfolio. So again, I don't have a magic number to sort of convey to you where we would need to be, but we need to stay consistent and we need to increase that number so that our assets are maintained in best conditions. We want to minimize reliance on debt, and certainly for debt that would be taken on for what we term state of good repair capital. So we want to invest debt where it makes sense, take on what we term good debt. You certainly don't want to pay for general operating through debt. You want to pay for long-term life cycle assets where you're going to have a rate of return coming back. We want to be consistent in our contributions to critical reserves, and that's part of the financial plan, is building these reserves over a period of time. Not just reserves that I would deem maybe for a rainy day or overall to invest into this capital sort of moving forward, but we're starting to develop what I deem as reserves that are for unforeseen circumstances or items that are out of our control. So we want to stabilize expenditure. So things like fuel costs, things like winter control and our winter responses. In any given year, we can do best efforts to forecast the budgets, but if we don't start to build in these stabilization reserves, then in any given year, we might be asking for a major increase in a program. So we want to try to smooth them out, as I mentioned. You're going to hear a little bit today, you've heard already in the past, and you will hear ongoing, our prep and preparations for growth. It's certainly that readiness is accelerating. It's accelerating dramatically in some of the requests and some of the pledges that Council has made and will continue to make on meeting the housing supply in the province by 2031. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then again, we want to continuously define our service levels so that we're operating in an open and transparent manner, looking at where those priority areas for municipal service delivery are and what are the respective investments that go along with them. So this is a graphic summary that just looks at what we deem our core assets versus our non-core assets and just gives you a general breakdown of that sort of overall asset portfolio. But essentially, it is as I mentioned, an overall portfolio that's valued at about $4 billion in replacement value. So let's talk a little bit about some of the capital investments for 2023, and they've been quite substantive. You have seen a number of transformations in some of our urban centers and downtowns, and certainly Bobcaygeon Beach Park is one example of a large-scale regional serving, if you will, investment in an asset. When we talk about our capital budgets specifically, and again, I'm talking about our sort of tangible assets, this graphic really just displays the investment in our capital portfolio from 2018 and into the draft 2024 budget. You can see that there was a pause during 2021, but essentially we're right back on track and increasing annually that investment back into our capital assets. Over a 10-year cycle, we should be, or we're forecasting in the next 10 years, about a $1.1 billion investment being needed in our capital programs overall to continue along. So we're starting to get to that benchmark and to that level, and our financial plan builds in that sort of forecast over the 10-year period. And it's a combination of investment back in, again, what we call our state of good repair or our existing assets, and we're extending the life and improving those assets, and also balancing the need for expansionary assets to accommodate that growth, for example, that I had mentioned. We still want to catch up on those deferred projects, and in the 2024 budget, was listed previous year as well, we listed capital projects that were forecasted, but we couldn't get to in that sort of 21-22 cycle. And so one of the efforts and priorities is to catch up to move those deferral projects forward. And a lot of them, can't remember the exact, it's about a third of the list is proposed for the 2024 capital budget as well. When we talk about capital, we try to balance sort of our overall needs. We've got a massive portfolio, as I mentioned already, but to give you just a snapshot or idea of the $72 million that's proposed to be invested in next year's capital budgets, about $33 million of that is investing in roads and road infrastructure specifically. About $24 million is investment in facilities and sites, and about $14 million is being invested or proposed in fleet and other equipment to support the overall services. So next steps for our long-term financial plan. We're going to come back to you in the first quarter of next year. We want to do another extensive update, and essentially we want to now bring forward actuals from 22, 2023 this year, as well as what you end up approving for the 2024 budgets, and then layer that into the next 10-year planning. In the following quarter, we're going to bring forward an update on our asset management plan. We have legislated requirements to expand on that plan still, and in this case to look at non-core assets and value them and plan for their maintenance in the future. And then in the following year, we're obligated, there'll be another legislated update to our asset management plan to formally define our city service levels. So let's talk briefly about financial or Finance 101, however you wish to characterize it. We're talking about, we'll talk first about property taxes. We get the question obviously all the time. There's a lot of good information online, and there's many factors that determine how much taxes a residential property would pay. It starts with the assessed value of the property. There's a mix of residential and non-residential properties throughout the city that we levy taxes to. Then you layer on your budgets, municipal services that are provided, and then obviously there's the size, location, and population of the municipality. So the number of ratepayers and all of that translates into a levied tax to an individual property. As far as the assessment values, you've heard from us before. The province has continued to postpone updated property assessments. That postponement has been ongoing since 2021. And for the 2024 tax year, property assessments will continue to be based on January 1st, 2016 assessed values. So I mentioned a little bit about sort of our size and scope of budgets, and although we have urban centers, we have rural hamlets, we've got farmlands, we've got everything in between. We've got a large geography. We're covering over 3,000 square kilometers just in our municipal boundaries alone. This is really a demonstration. We've sort of characterized it over the last couple of years just to give some context of roads. As an example, where we're managing over 5,300 kilometers of lane roadways. And that, if you look at the map, it translates into the roadways that you would need to do to get to Florida and get back again, and all of the maintenance that would go on in between. That's what we are managing sort of collectively in an annual basis. But what this slide also is suggesting is essentially that we have a low relative density to population. And so when we start to look at how we prioritize or manage services, again, as you can appreciate, if we just use roads as an example, where you see on the graphic Kawartha Lakes based on our population and our densities, that's the equivalent to 7 households per lane kilometer paying for those respective improvements. And so we just sort of characterize it so that you kind of get an idea of the scope and scale of what we're trying to accomplish, especially when I go back to that asset value of $4 billion and all of that entails. But I think we're doing a good job. I think we're staying up to pace. I think collectively and in past councils, you saw a previous slide, our investment back into that capital and strategic investments, higher traveled roads, sort of looking at how those roads are built and how they're maintained. All of the strategies are on the table and they're deployed through the budgets. But I think you've seen an ongoing and increasing investment in those key assets, roads being one example. So one of the other things I mentioned is growth, and past council and this council has heard from me sort of directly that, for the past several years, I characterize we've essentially been in a development readiness mode. We've been looking at planning for critical infrastructure. We've been planning for maybe modest to larger growth in previous years to a sort of 2031 and even beyond threshold. Our planning was actually quite spot on when you look at sort of what's been coming out of the province recently. The difference is the acceleration of that growth. So we're looking to now accommodate about 6,500 dwelling units in the city across the board by 2031. So a 7-year plan to do that. That translates approximately into about 13 to 15,000 population or individuals. So we're no longer sort of modest planning. This is quite a leap forward relative to our current population. So we got to start now. As you know, it takes a while to build a water plant and plan for it, for example. And so if we want to realize these numbers, we need to make some strategic investments in the budgets, accelerate some of those investments as well. And I'm pleased to say that the 2024 budget does that. It does look at critical infrastructure and starting processes that we need. When I started, I said we've been in readiness mode for quite some time, and that was good because that same sort of planning we were doing back in 2018, 2019, sort of getting certain plans and documents in order, critical infrastructure and expansions to some of our plants, for example, have now been completed. So we're able to now transition into this growth slow and steady, if you will. This graphic just demonstrates the range of services that we deliver. I mentioned as a single tier, we deliver all of the municipal or local services under the one organization. This highlights those various services. There's over 200 of them, and it sort of breaks down by gross expenditure how we budget within these respective areas. Not too much has changed, relatively speaking, over the last 5 to 6 years in terms of the amount of expenditure. Obviously, that expenditure, though, overall has increased over that 5 to 6 year period. When we talked about capital and that particular budget, and we're going to talk about it for 2024 in a minute. This graphic just displays now on the operating budget side overall what we're managing, and that is the overall operations, programs and services, and we'll detail sort of what categories or what expenditures fall within those operating budgets. This graphic we displayed before, and again, it's really just showing from a financial planning perspective when we started back in 2017 and then looked beyond for the next 10 years. It outlined sort of what we were forecasting as needed tax levies in order to support and expand on the business. It then has actuals outlined in red, what was levied in any given budget year. And then on the right-hand side of the graphic, it talks about beyond 2024 and beyond, and where we should actually be to continue to maintain that stability, that investment in that forecasted budgets in years to come. So we talk about debt and as being one strategy and way to manage and to invest back in our assets. We have roughly about $111 million in debt currently. And I, again, acknowledge and recognize it's a big number. Relatively speaking, and what I was saying in the past, part of our financial strategy is to minimize our reliance on debt and also to take on debt where it makes sense, where it's appropriate, where you're investing in longer term assets in particular. And I would strongly suggest that councils past and current have really kept their eye on this particular category and maintained a debt to asset ratio that is quite outstanding, I would suggest. Again, $4 billion worth of assets, look at it like a household and sort of a value of a household. If you were to translate it sort of in a conventional mortgage in terms of taking on debt, you would be looking at about $19 $100,000 in a mortgage for a home valued at $700,000, relatively speaking to our assets. So again, I commend council's past and current. I think it's something that we should always keep our eye on. And again, with the idea being that you want to take on good debt where it makes sense, but certainly not take on debt where you're just covering sort of general operating expenses or anything of that nature. And so with that, Mr. Mayor, talked about long-term financial planning, talked generally about financial planning. I'm going to ask Director Bukaboom now to walk you through the 2024 proposed budgets.
Thank you. Go ahead, Director, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Ron, for the introduction. Sorry, CAO Taylor, for the introductions and the preamble so far. So we're now turning attention to what is in this 2024 budget, which is broken down into our operating, being our ongoing services of the 200 you just saw on the bar graph. Capital are one-time in nature, resulting in the improvement of an asset or creation of a brand new one. Or our special projects, which are a fairly new category to our budgets, that are one-time in nature, but they don't result in a capital asset. So we have two different budgets. The property tax supported has operating capital and special projects, and the water and wastewater is borne only by the residents that receive that service. Some receive water and sewer, some just water, some just sewer. That budget has an operating component and a fixed capital. And those budgets are broken down in this pie chart, with the property tax operating being the largest on this graph at $255 million, the property tax support at $72 million, special projects just over $2 million, water and wastewater $26 million, and the capital being almost $13 million for the water wastewater infrastructure. So the capital budget will be deliberated November 28th. And in that budget, we have two types of investments in the projects. One is a state of good repair. So these are assets we own, and we do condition rating, and we determine the lifespan, the state of the asset, and what is required to maintain that asset to provide the services. In addition to that, we have what's called the expansionary or growth section of the budget, which are all those assets required to service all of this growth coming, the 6,500 units CAO Taylor referred to. We have a lot of expansionary investments to make in order to accommodate that growth. So overall, both state of good repair and expansionary, the capital budget stands at $72.3 million. With $33 million being the largest component of this budget in the road section, always gets the biggest attention in the budgets. Facility and site works, $24.7 million, and again, that is based on methodical condition rating, utilization rates, et cetera, in order to populate that amount. Fleet and equipment is getting $14.3 million, and some other minor categories at $110,000. This is how the capital budget is financed. Largest portion of the pie is debenture. That's a mix between our state of good repair debenture, and some of those are the growth projects. The asset management reserve is the second largest financer of this budget in the capital, and $16 million is coming from the operating budget transferred to that reserve to support these projects. Development charges in the slight yellow on the left side of the graph, just over $9 million to support those growth projects. DCs can only be applied to the growth projects as deemed through the DC Act. Of significant importance, we've highlighted the projects greater than $1 million. So the state of good repair, we have several listed there, and in terms of expansionary, We have the Colburn Street Bridge, fire rescue pumper tankers, and again, the expansionary growth are partially funded from the developers. And this is a graphical display of the area or the geographic regions where these investments of the 72 million are being made in terms of those large projects. So equally dispersed around our large geographic disparity. Special projects. So this commenced in 2020, and it was meant to handle those types of expenditures that span more than 1 year, so therefore not operating in nature, but they require the project management skills similar to a capital project. So they include things like studies, plans, strategies. Any of our larger tribunal appeals take longer than a year, and they do not, again, result in an asset. So they cannot be funded from the capital budget. These projects total just over 2 million in this current budget. And they include these highlighted larger components. So the development charges bylaw appeals that are currently underway at the city, bridge and culvert study. We're moving into source separated organics, which will take some investment. So we're setting money aside in a reserve. Transit and library master plans to help inform that long-term asset management planning, and the healthy environment plan update. Water and wastewater component of the budget. The city is responsible for 21 water systems, 6 wastewater systems, one of the highest in the province. It's essential to both water and wastewater systems, and it includes things like the treatment plants, but also the pumping stations, the reservoirs, the water towers, water mains, and sewer mains. So there's a lot of assets in this category. They're funded by the uniform, or once upon a time I dubbed it the postage stamp rate. In other words, every recipient on a water wastewater system pays the same amount. So Lindsay pays the same as Woodville, and it's not dependent on the number of users on that independent system. This year's operating budget for the water and wastewater is at 15.2 million, and that's broken down between treatment and distribution, debt servicing. We transfer money to reserves, as well as the administration, and predominantly funded between the bottom 2 categories on the right being the fixed user rate and the consumptive. So the fixed user rate, every recipient of the water sewer pays a flat amount, irregardless of their variability in their consumption rate. The wastewater component is almost 11 million in this proposed budget, draft budget, and that's again broken down between treatment and collection, debt servicing costs, transfer to reserves, and administration. And likewise, fixed user rate is 5 million, the consumptive rate slightly lesser than 5 million. On the capital side, the city is investing almost 13 million in our water wastewater assets. Again, some are in that growth-related component and others in the state of good repair. So you'll see on the financing side, we have some reserves on the water side of our budgets. We have debenture, we have some reserves. Large component is DC eligible, and again, some of the debentures. Some significant projects in this budget, a major upgrade to the Lindsay Wastewater Treatment Lagoon, the Rideout Street Pumping Station, King Street Mains, Lindsay to Logie Street, Elise Street, etc. The budget is aligned with both the water and wastewater study that is done for a 10-year time period that always follows the same time period as the long-term financial plan. We're within the 3% rate increase with the growth in this area and with the expenditure that have been brought forward. And finally, the largest component of these budgets, the operating budget. Currently, this draft budget sits at 4.56%. Within this budget and with the long-term plan, we've been experiencing significant inflation since the coming out of the pandemic. We are preparing the pending growth, preparing for that target of 6,500 in this budget. We have new legislation. We've experienced rising borrowing cost over the last 2 years or the last year, and we'll see, we're anticipating some stabilization in that in 2024. We've invested in staff, both retention and attraction, in some of our pertinent key areas. We're in an uncertain global economy and still experiencing the after effects of COVID on this budget. We are building and continuing investments to help stabilize in our reserves, to help reduce the swing in the budget percentages and be able to be somewhat more self-sustainable by using reserves. We've also been experiencing limited increase of revenues, and certainly in some of our grant areas. So overall, the largest component of these budgets, the operating budget, sits at $255.6 million, with these main categories of cost expenditures. And the revenues, somewhat 50%, just slightly under 50%, is from taxation. A lot of the operating budget, $75 million, is that grant category. User charges, so things like the program rates that are charged, the landfill charges, those help subsidize the tax base. And another category is $13 million. Where does our 143 in tax dollars go? Again, that's coming from this larger left side of the chart. The largest component by far is between human services at 25%, so that's our social services, our homelessness, our housing, et cetera. Emergency services are the other big component at 24%, public works at 26%, with the other minor areas contributing a lesser percentage here. So we've completed the October 17th, this same overview to a more lengthy extent on a regular council meeting. We have presented the city departmental individual budgets, overviews to you. Tonight we are here for the 7 o'clock overview of this 24 budget and receive input from the public. On the 28th, we will deliberate the capital budget. And on December 5th, we will deliberate the operating budget, special projects, water, wastewater, operating, and capital on the December 5th meeting. You can follow along with the budget process, both on the City of Kawartha Lakes website under the budget area. You can also subscribe for emails and budget news. That ends the presentation, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. I'm not going to ask for questions from council tonight because this is the public meeting for the public, and you will have your opportunity to ask questions. If you have anything pressing about the presentation from CAO Taylor and Director Bokenboom, send them an email or catch them when you're in City Hall. But you will have a chance to ask your questions when we deliberate the budget. So what I'm looking for is a motion to receive the deputation or the presentation. Deputy Mayor Richardson, Councillor McDonald, all in favor? And that's passed. Thank you. We'll move on now to presentations regarding the draft 2024 budget for the City of Kawartha Lakes. Item 5.1, Ms. Heather Kirby, Kawartha Lakes Food Source. And whenever you're ready, Ms. Kirby.
Thank you. My name is Heather Kirby. I'm the Executive Director of Kawartha Lakes Food Source. We are the largest food insecurity focused organization within the City of Kawartha Lakes. We serve 7 of 14 food banks within the city. We serve 24 of 32 schools and 6 social service agencies. I did present to Council back in May as a broader introduction about more of our services, and tonight I'm here to ask for some collaboration. I'm sure all of us have heard and seen the news lately. The Food Banks Canada had put out the report, and it's kind of touching on all of that, just as a friendly reminder that this is a national issue with food insecurity. So people need money in their pocket if they want to buy food. Food is available in grocery stores. Anyone can get to a grocery store. You can only buy food if you have money in your pocket. So food is available, it's accessible, it's just not able to be purchased. Food banks are only able to give between 5 to 7 days worth of food at a time. We are run as a not-for-profit. We rely on charity donations from the community, and we also get a few grants from family foundations and things like that. As we know, people are a lot happier when they're fed. We all know what it's like to be hangry, but imagine that feeling for a few days, and people will be passing on food because they don't have it available, or they would prefer to give it to their children. So hunger is a severe and very significant problem in our community. I go over the stats, but quick summary there, you guys all have the report. The concept that I'd like to bring today is an increased access to food. Our optimum solution is for policy change and increased social services. That's a municipal, provincial, and federal question. I always ask it every time I meet. It's still there. In the meantime, growing food where it is needed is not a solution, but it is one step closer to getting food to people who need just a little bit more. We do have open gardens that are very successful. They're open to anyone. There's no gates, there's no locks, there's no fences. Anyone in the community can go and harvest what they need. We just ask that they take only what they need for a few days and come back and get more. Out of our 80 raised beds, we know that 70% of it was directly harvested by the community. So we know that they're serving their purpose. The other 30% we harvested ourselves and distributed out to the food banks directly. So really the question is, how do we get more food to more people? And that's what Kawartha Lakes Food Source looks at every day. So what I'm hoping to do, kind of jumped ahead here a little bit, but I think my slides are out of order. That's all right here. What I'd like to do is partner and collaborate with the city on building raised garden beds at social housing and in partnership with the Kawartha Lakes Housing Corporation. Through the Kawartha Lakes Food Charter that the city supports, as well as the Poverty Reduction Plan, supporting this collaboration is in everyone's best interest. We'd like to get food to those who have challenges getting to a food bank, mobility and having food directly outside a building increases access to food significantly. Just going through my notes because that's not the right way. What I'm proposing is 12 raised beds at different buildings. They can be at one. This is through the collaboration that I'd like to meet with and discuss over the winter of the planning. There you go. I'm just one behind here. The direct ask for the city and Kawartha Lakes Housing is to cover the construction costs. That'll be on the next slide. I'd like the city to take charge of the tendering process as it's on municipal property, or to take the responsibility of building it themselves, and to take annual responsibility of the spring and fall maintenance. The last question to ask is to have access to water the gardens throughout the summer. With volunteers and staff from Kawartha Lakes Food Source, our commitment would be to monitor, plant, maintain, harvest, and all the things that nurture a garden to grow. So we're just looking for the spring and fall tidy up. We'll do the rest. And it's a partnership that can be ongoing year over year over year once the beds are in place. We don't have, Kawartha Lakes Food Source doesn't have the capacity to take on more garden beds at this time. Over the next few years, we potentially can, and that can be an ongoing conversation with the city and our partnership. So as I mentioned, 12 beds is what we're looking for. Total cost is $6,335. Average cost with at-level beds and also accessible beds, so making them 3 feet in height for those that have mobility challenges. So we'd like a combination of both. And the cost includes the lumber, the screws, the screenings, triple mix, poly, and the labor. Looking at potential yield, if we have one bed, depending on lots of variables here, 30 pounds of food, 12 beds equals 360 pounds of food, which is quite significant. This also really just factors in the main growing season. It doesn't have the spring and the fall growing season and any shoulder and any successive planting. It's just one crop. And we also have to factor in any loss for pests and weather and other kind of factors. We would plant the most common items, most familiar items, things that don't need to be cooked. Folks who are struggling often don't have kitchen equipment or have access to a kitchen. Especially those who are homeless, so having things that they can just harvest right then, wipe off on your leg, and you can eat a carrot at any time that doesn't need to be cooked. Over time, we'd hope that the tenants would help take over or maintain or support and engage with the gardens. There's a lot of benefits to that, and through that process, we would consult to see what they wanted in time. They potentially may be able to take over a lot of the work at the gardens. For future consideration, I would like the council to consider planting edible landscapes at Armory Park. It is a place of congregation. Although flowers are beautiful and, you know, Communities in Bloom is a great initiative, you can't eat that stuff. And we have folks that are looking to eat. So let's put some food where folks are. Part of the assets you guys, that the city has is community centers based in smaller communities around the entire city. It's also a consideration to put community gardens in on those properties and allow the smaller communities to take those over and not have a fee to access them, but just have them available for folks. So the final ask is a collaboration to plant garden beds at social housing in partnership with Kawartha Lakes Housing Corp. And provide and have access to food to those in social housing. Those are the folks that need it the most. Thank you so much.
Thank you. If you'd stay there, there may be a question or two. But first, can I get a motion to receive the deputation and to refer it as a decision unit to the 2024 budget? Councillor Perry, Councillor Joyce. Sorry, I'll get you guys before we're through. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, from council, sorry. Seeing none, Heather, it'll be referred as a decision unit, and talking to a couple of directors, I think, you know, we certainly will be in touch with you and work with you over the winter.
Thank you so much.
Okay. All in favor? Thank you. And that's passed. Next up, Ms. Barbara Doyle, Kawartha Lakes Museum and Archives. Welcome.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to council. I really appreciate you having us here tonight to kind of do an update meeting, deputation from our previous presentation back in the spring. So I'm here from the museum, which you're very well aware of. Oh, let me see if I can get this going. It's not going. Okay. Everybody's very familiar with the old jail building. This is what it looked like back in 1865, just 2 years after it was built. Here's a beautiful photo from the John Wayne Boyd collection from the 1950s. So you can see it's progressed. And this is how it looks this year. As our building has changed in function and capacity, so has the museum. And that is what brings me here today. The 2023 funding outcomes of $125,000, which was 50% of our request back in the spring for the 2023 budget. I wanted to share with you what we've been able to do with that. We were able to hire 2 full-time positions, including myself and our archivist, Zach Miller. We were able to hire 3 other full-time 1-year contracts and 8 other full-time contracts and a 1 part-time position for a total of 15 jobs this year. That is a tremendous amount of employment for an organization of our size, but not quite as much as we need. We were able to do a direct mail campaign to every single household in Kawartha Lakes, asking for every householder's opinion about the work that we do, what they would like to see us do, how they interact with the museum. And we also did a campaign survey with every single teacher and school in the city of Kawartha Lakes, including the online school and adult education. We completed 3 large-scale collection reviews, including medical collection, china and glass, and home textiles. This is thousands and thousands of pieces in our collection that we reviewed, cataloged, digitized, and properly stored. We launched 3 new exhibits in the museum, including World War II by Air, Land, and Sea, The Art of Fancy Work, a Victorian mourning collection, and my favorite right now is called Laundry, the Never-Ending Story. And that's in addition to 2 large outreach exhibitions. We did the Old Mill at the Lindsay exhibition this year, as well as just this past weekend, we did the Lindsay Daily Post at the Agricultural Society's home show. We developed new educational programming and community outreach. We did ongoing digitization project of the Lindsay Daily Post, and 3 large-scale virtual exhibits that are launching this year or have already launched. The Giants of Lindsay, which is the J.D. and William Flavel story, and The Art of Collecting, which is the collections of Jean Laidlaw Shields and Peggy Laidlaw Woodrow, and through his lens, Alan Capone's photographic history of Lindsay. This is a little bit about some of the work that we've been doing. Many of the counselors have been through the museum to see some of the digitization project. This is Jenna Locke, who is one of our full-time hires right now. The Lindsay Daily Post collection is massive. It's 311 bound books with issues going back into the 1800s, but this project goes from 1917 to 1974, and each page is individually scanned and then recreated into an issue format and posted online into Internet archives for free access to the public. It's all keyword searchable, and then it also protects the issues from being handled for researchers, makes it ultimately accessible for everybody. This is Harley Arsenal, who is digitizing our negative collection. Thousands and thousands of negatives that have never before been really able to be used are run through this special scanner to be able to create a photographic image quality and be able to both digitally store the image and make it available for development and research. This is my favorite. This year we were invited to create an exhibit for the Ontario Legislative Assembly. And this exhibit, called From Housing Inmates to Housing History, has been on exhibit at Queen's Park since May and will run through December. Over 200 applicants made a bid for the spaces, and out of 6 spaces available, we were chosen. It is an incredibly good tourism aspect for people visiting the legislature to see items from Kawartha Lakes in a variety of formats through this exhibit. This was our Lex exhibit at the Old Mill this year in the fall. Just a little bit about what we do. It's a 60-foot exhibit, and we talked to 1,515 people this year, direct interaction, meaningful conversations, not just people walking by, but people actually engaged with us, looking at the exhibit and speaking with us. This is our World War II exhibit, a little bit about what we're doing in the museum for those of you that have not been in. We are very grateful to the Lindsay Legacy Chest Fund that helped provide the new conservation mannequins this year and our large-scale mannequin display cases that are archival quality and protecting our very important military objects. This year, we received collections in the thousands and thousands of numbers. This year, so far, to the end of October, We have received and processed 971 objects, 7,668 photographs, 60 books, 2,059 documents, and textual records that are 2.64 meters tall or wide. This does not include the ongoing work from previously received items or items that have been received but not yet processed. So if you can imagine the sheer volume of work that it takes to be able to properly receive, catalog, digitize if possible, and then store all of these items. It's a very, very staff-intensive job. We did a wonderful program for educational programming this year. This was one of the things that we talked about in the spring to ensure that the work that we do is available to students of all ages across Kawartha Lakes. We contracted a one-year full-time position to engage with community stakeholders, teachers, schools, other community partners, to survey for local needs. The textbooks are fairly generic. We're able to help fill out that content and that curriculum touch point with local information. This resulted in development of new programming specific to education curriculum for all grades 1 through 12, with multiple programs for each age group. Development of 3 new traveling educational experiences for grades 1 to 4, and then grades 9 to 12, as well as an adult piece that can grow out as well as development of adult education and outreach opportunities, and continued engagement with local schools and adjoining districts for student tours. Outreach to local youth organizations is very important to support continued learning. And we do support continued education through workplace learning opportunities and co-op placements. Actually, this is slightly off. We actually have 3 secondary school co-op students. We did one, in this year, we did one post-secondary practicum placement for a Bachelor of Education student. We are available for case studies, placements for museum-related studies or tourism disciplines. We worked with VCCS for job skill training opportunities, and actually, we just engaged a new hire for the starting next week through VCCS, who is one of our former co-op students. And they so loved working with us through the co-op program this year that they deliberately went out to find an opportunity to be able to come back and work with us, and they'll be with us for an 18-week job placement. So that's really incredibly good. We do a lot of volunteer engagement and mentoring programs as well. So the metrics. Everybody wants to know about the numbers, and this is where we really shine. I know you're very aware of our rebrand. Changing from the Old Jail Museum, the Victoria County Historical Society, to the Kawartha Lakes Museum and Archives has been the most incredible success. Our visitor count in the museum is up 462% from 2022. About 42% of those visitors are from out of Kawartha Lakes, largely from Durham, GTA, and Peterborough. Overall, retail gift shop sales were up 360% from 2022. We have made a very concentrated effort to expand our gift shop and provide more retail revenue to help offset the project expenses that it takes. Overall revenues of $335,000 in 2022 to $635 projected year-end revenues is up plus 94% from last year. And just for scale, in the last 5 years, we've gone from $32,000 of revenue in 2018 to $635 in revenue this year. Our projected budget for next year is about $865,000. We completed, to the end of October, 12 museum events. We did outreach events with over 2,500 plus engagement. Kawartha Lakes Pride, Lindsay Exhibition, the Agricultural Society Home Show. We do trivia at the Pie-Eyed Monk every month, and we support the Kawartha Lakes Writers Festival. Our digital engagement reach is up 40% from last year. So when we're looking at category expenses, wages for the our 2024 budget, we're looking at $572,300 for wages. That equals about 67% of our budget. As a sector-wide comparison, Most museums run at about an 80% wage cost. That's kind of an industry standard. We will be spending 13% on exhibition development and educational programming for $114,000, 10% on conservation supplies, which is $85,000, and 6% for administration, office supplies, building maintenance, tech, and software at $58,665, and 4% on fundraising and marketing.
I'm going to ask you to wrap it up,
We're
please.
just about there. So I know I sent around development of the strategic plan. You can have a great look through it and ask me questions as you would like. Our ask today is for $250,000, the same as we did in the spring, because our needs have not reduced, as well as to become a permanent line item in the city budget, and to develop a memorandum of understanding, very much, say, like Cobeconk Wellness Center, as we go forward into our capital build project for an expansion on the building. We're looking, as the museum staff and board, to raise $18 to $20 million to pay for that expansion, which will be a city asset. And we're looking at support for us in operational staffing dollars only. It's going straight to investing in people, and that's what we're here for today. So I'm hoping that we'll probably have some questions for you. Thank you so much for my time. I really appreciate it.
Okay, let me get a motion to receive the presentation and to refer it to decision units in the 2024 budget. So we'll take Councillor Ashmore, Councillor Warren, and are there any questions? Councillor Joyce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, it's a very impressive investment there. Metrics, I love metrics. Two questions. One is the archives. You said start the Lindsay Post. Did you start at 1917 and move forward?
Yes.
And how long do you think it will take to finish that project?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Joyce. So right now, this project scope is from 1917 to 1974. We have completed 1917 up to 1955. There's a 5-year gap between 1960 and 1974, which is already complete. So we have 5 more years to complete right now. We are going to complete that portion of the project early, and then we will be able to go from 1917 backwards, to hopefully to the end of our collection in late 1800s.
Excellent. In the metrics, there's one critical one, unless I missed it. When you have people visiting,
Yes.
do you discern between local
Yes.
population and people coming from outside the region?
Yes, about 42% are from outside the region, primarily GTA, Durham, and Peterborough. We track every visitor that comes in. We ask them directly where they're from, have they visited before, and we keep track on sheets every week.
That's an important metric to highlight. 42% coming
Yes.
from outside the region, because when they come here, they'll go for dinner, they'll buy a coffee,
Yes.
they'll go shopping elsewhere, and
About
spend money here. So
$11.70 comes back to the community around us in terms of for-profit businesses for every dollar invested in an organization like ours in heritage and culture. The other thing we're seeing is quite a lot of newcomers to the area that are either looking to buy here and want to see what's available for them, or people who have just bought here and are looking to learn about their new community.
thank you.
So we have a motion. All in favor? Oh, Councillor Ashmore, did you have a question?
Yeah. No, I just had through you, Mr. Mayor, to Barbara. I just wanted to thank Barbara and Zach. Today, I had a tour this morning, and it was very interesting. Showed me the whole facility, and I actually saw the process of the digitizing of the Lindsay Daily Post as an example. So it was quite a really good tour. So I wanted to thank Barbara for that. That's all. Thanks, and Zach, and your staff.
Thank you. All in favor? And that passes. Our next presentation is by Amy Terrell and Lacey Maxwell from the Boys and Girls Club. Whenever you're ready.
Good evening, Mayor Elmsley, councillors. Thank you so much for the time, and to the councillors on Zoom and to the public here this evening or watching online. We're very pleased to join you this evening for a short presentation. Lacey Maxwell's with me. She's a colleague of mine at BGC Kawarthas. I know many of you, so thank you. It's nice to see you again. Before Lacey tells her story, we're going to set a little bit of context, and I guess this is my clicker, so I'll just, let me figure this out here first. Where am I pointing it? Oh, excellent. Okay, so to set some context, we have a short video that Sarah's going to play for us. This is hot off the presses. It hasn't been seen anywhere else, and there's no public release yet, so this is just for you this evening.
Too many days in the darkness, without a glimpse of the light. Running tired and broken and scared, but I swear I'll never give up the fight.
If they have never been to the club before and never heard of it, I'd say it's a very friendly, very accepting, and very helpful place to be. At school, I had a difficult time making friends as well. I was quite often pushed away from the groups. I didn't really find a place to fit in. My mom's solution was to send me to the Boys and Girls Club.
With every star, we are born again.
I found that this has helped give her a lot of confidence. She joined the youth council here, which gave her a voice, that she was able to make some changes and feel like she was a part of something that was making a difference.
So it helped me a lot making friends as well, because a lot of the friends that I met here, I'm actually still friends with to this day.
We've had a few opportunities to talk to kids to really learn about what they get out of being here at the club, and there are some really consistent results. They're really excited to try new things, so lots of new opportunities here with our facility, with our programs, so they're more confident, they're more curious. They make friends, they have physical activity. I mean, they're more active because they come to the club every day. Just general health and wellness and well-being.
With every star,
on average, we have 120 kids coming in the warehouse door during a week. They need some guidance. Through COVID, they became isolated, their behaviors, and they struggled with building relationships again and understanding what to do when they're, when they're going through difficult times. So our staff are really great mentors. Those staff are so critical, and we just don't have consistent funding to support those youth services. That's the biggest area of need and biggest growth. Thank you, Sarah. And back to our presentation. Thanks everybody. I know many of you have been to the club, have seen certainly some of the activities there, but we wanted to give you that general overview. That footage was really captured in August during summer camp, so that's why you see mostly the young ones. And you'll find out in a moment why the youth, the footage there wasn't our current youth warehouse. We have, of course, a lot of people understand, they know that we provide summer camps and after school care. They may not know that not only is a lot of it there at our Lindsay Street site, but we also have a presence in many other communities in Kawartha Lakes. So regular after school presence in Little Britain, Mariposa, Cobeconk, Kirkfield, and Dunsford. And then some of the sports programs you saw there. Often there are sports programs in Lindsay, but also Fenland Falls and Omimi on a regular basis. And we do a lot of other skill building programs in other communities. So we are your club, and we're really pleased to be able to serve thousands of children and youth each year. Fewer people know about our youth services, and that's what we're here to talk about tonight. You see just an infographic there which gives you a sense of the breadth of services that we provide to youth. We're really talking about youth between 13 and 18 primarily, but we do offer some services up to some older youth as well, and we're working with partners to see what more we can do to provide support for their needs. But it's a wide range. We're going to hear a little bit about it from Lacey. You saw Dakota on screen. She talked a bit about the leadership programs. You saw the food being served. We have 120 coming in each week on a regular basis in to meet our staff and get some support, mental health and wellness, substance use awareness, leadership, homework help, career counseling, really those life skills that all of our youth need. So with those youth services, we see an opportunity, and that's why we're here tonight, and that's to respond to the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan and to help the city meet the achievements or what's needed in that youth pillar. We also are conscious of the projected growth, and we've heard a couple of examples of it this evening. We understand that there's going to be more growth largely in the urban areas and also a younger demographic than maybe we've seen in the past, leading to a higher youth population that will increase the need in our community. So with that as context, I'm going to ask Lacey now to share a bit of her story. And she loves this photo, so I threw it in that presentation for her. So Lacey, you go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I have written myself this story of my history here at the BGC, and the most impactful program for me was the Youth Services program. So I have been a member of the BGC pretty much my whole life. I used to attend the after-school programming when I was in elementary school, which was a safe place for me to be in care. And with this, I had access to positive role models in the community, healthy food available, and fantastic programming. As I grew older, I could stay home after school. I would walk home after the bell rang, turn on the TV, and eat all the snacks in the cupboards. I was not eating the healthy options my mom provided. What can I say? I was in the 6th grade. As you can imagine, from grades 6 to 10, every day this was my routine. Walk home, eat junk food, watch TV, Monday to Friday. It wasn't until I entered the 10th grade that the Warehouse Youth Center opened for the first time. I remember someone suggesting I go to the youth center just to see what's available. I was a little nervous since I hadn't been to the facility in a long time, but I was willing to check it out. I remember walking through the youth center doors and just thinking, wow, there's this whole center created now for teens. At that time, there was a pool table, brand new large kitchen for cooking, couches for lounging and socializing, a big computer lab for homework help. I was impressed with what I was seeing and I was hooked. From that point on, I chose to attend the youth center every chance I could. Attending the youth center was a turning point in my life. I no longer was sitting at home each day, ignoring my homework, watching TV, not making the healthiest decisions. Now I had connection. I made friends. I built meaningful relationships with the staff. I had access to healthy meals, homework help, mentoring, assistance to applying to college, getting my first job, you name it. I quickly began relying on the services of the youth center, but there was one thing that was missing at the youth center. We are not open on the weekends. We do not have the funding to remain open during July and August. Can you imagine being a youth in the community in need of a safe space with access to all these resources, and suddenly the doors are closed for 2 months? That's a very long time for a child in need. I am lucky enough to return to the youth center as a staff member. My role now is the food and nutrition supervisor, and I'm so grateful to give back to a community that has given so much to me. I can reflect now as an adult on my experience at the youth center. I'm so thankful for all they have provided on a very small budget. I am just one youth who has been impacted by the youth center of the thousands who have walked through those doors and the thousands that will walk through in the future again. But that doesn't ignore the fact that we do still see some gaps in our resources, which is exactly why we need support from our community. I am one example of how when children are given a positive space, they will flourish. And I have to make it clear that there are youth with far worse off situations than what I was in. For example, in our community, we have youth involved with the law, youth experimenting with drugs and alcohol, youth who have no food at home, and their only access to food at times can be when they come to the youth center. Certainly, you can see from these examples our youth want to access our services. And that is the beauty of the drop-in center. The youth come here because they want to be here. The number of youth we serve is rapidly increasing. In September alone, we served 114 youths. That is 114 people with a very small staff team. Our staff team consists of a fantastic coordinator, Chrissy Maybe, our 3 supervisors, Mel, Andrew, and myself, part-time youth outreach worker, Madison, and a relief staff, Colton. Our team is small but mighty. Our team is here because we want to be here serving our community. We have come so far in 10 years, and we still have so far to go, and we would greatly appreciate the support from City of Kawartha Lakes to assist in filling in some of our gaps. And with your support, it could mean offering services year-round, never closing the door to support, allowing for meaningful relationships to remain open, providing consistent access to food and a safe space, and eventually reaching youth in a new community. Thank you for listening to my story.
Sorry, Amy, I'm going to ask you to wrap up as quickly as you can, please.
Sure. Thank you very much, Lacey. So you've seen some illustrations of the outcomes that we observe in our youth center. There are a few more on the screen, and you have a great deal more information in the package that was provided to you in advance. So Lacey referred to some gaps. We do not have sustainable funding for youth services, but we work really hard to fundraise and secure grants, and we do pretty well with the status quo. What we'd like to do is extend our hours over weekends and during the school year through the summer so that we don't have that gap in service that Lacey described. And we'd like to capture the rest of the geography. We serve 3 high schools very well in Lindsay, and we have, of course, other grade 7s and 8s in Lindsay, but we have a rest of our rural population, including our north with Fenland Falls High School and and the Education Center, Alternative Education. So those are just some examples of what we hear from youth. We're continue to do youth engagement to learn more about what they need, and we will continue to develop services to respond. These are just some municipal comparisons. You'll see that other communities have full-time, 7 days a week, 12 months a year youth drop-in that is municipally funded. We do not want you to duplicate what we do. We're asking about a partnership so that we can grow our services. And so we'll just cut to the chase. It's a long evening. The opportunity, this is what we're looking for, is to expand drop-in to 6 days per week, 12 months a year at our Lindsay site with your support, and to extend youth drop-in to Fenland Falls in cooperation with yourselves, the school board, and other partners in the community, and then to work together to continue to review and respond to needs. The operating grant request that we're asking for is $50,000 in year 1, growing to $100,000. We were actually advised that we should ask for more than we need, but that's not our strategy. We are asking you for what we need. I think you have a lot of pressures on your budget, and I want you to see the numbers that really would make a difference for our programs to be able to work with you and in partnership with the community to respond to these needs. And I will just say, because I know the Community Foundation of Kawartha Lakes is here in the room tonight, already we are talking about partners in Fenland Falls who might be able to assist with this vision to bring this to life, to help to meet the rest of the gap in a budget so that we can properly serve that community. And if it happened sooner, we would move sooner. So it doesn't have to be year 2. That's it. We're happy to answer any questions, and please, if you have additional questions through staff or through us in the weeks to come, please let us know.
Thank you. I get a motion to receive the presentation and to refer it to, as a decision unit, to the 2024 budget. Councillor Perry, Deputy Mayor Richardson, all in favor, and that's passed. Our final presentation tonight is from the Community Foundation. And we have Mr. Mark Knuster and Miss Lori Dillon-Shaw. And please, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mayor Elmsley, councillors, municipal staff for having us today. My name is Mark Knuster. I'm the incoming board chair for the Community Foundation of Kawartha Lakes. Since my involvement in the last year, I found myself involved with a very committed board of directors, well suited to carry out the mandate of the foundation. Coming on board at the same time was a new executive director, that being Lori Dillon-Shaw beside me, and so we've had a great collaborative result in moving forward the great work that was done in the previous 4 years by the founding members of the foundation. The foundation presented earlier this year to council to reintroduce the foundation and to share your incredible impact, or our incredible impact, having injected almost $1 million in community level investment since our inception. As a reminder of who we are, next slide please, Sarah. A little bit about us. We are founded by the community. We are dedicated to improving the quality of life in Kawartha Lakes. We attract endowment funds and facilitate philanthropic partnerships. We are part of the Community Foundation of Canada with a network of over 200 plus community foundations. Next slide, thank you. Our impact to you in the municipality is the following. We bring in funding to this area that otherwise would not have come in. As an example, as part of the Community Foundations of Canada network, which is a national funder for the federal government, we were able to facilitate 3 rounds of federal pandemic relief funding. Most recently, $302,000 from $100,000 from the Community Service Recovery Grant. We're an avenue for future funding of granting opportunities. We elevate emerging community efforts for area nonprofits, something Lori will touch on in a moment. Finally, we facilitate financing of community level investments, most notably the Grove Theatre. So with me today is our Executive Director, Lori Dillon-Shaw, who will now detail our asks.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. At the very core of the foundation is an invaluable service. We manage the complex processes around donation, tax receipting, and funds management, which includes disbursement. These processes need to be timely, secure, transparent, compliant, accurate, verifiable to the CRA. We have the tools, the technology, the training, the partnerships to run smoother like any other large foundation. If you are an emerging community effort, a volunteer-based organization, a young nonprofit, a struggling charity, your first investment is not necessarily donor management systems or systems integration, or certainly not funds management. And if you're not automated, it's a very manual, time-consuming process. We protect that. We are part of the critical infrastructure required for the community to help itself. Next slide, please. Jamie Schmall, in a recent social post, wrote, "The goal is to empower the private sector, not-for-profit agencies, etc., to finance and build the growth ahead." We offer the infrastructure needed to make that happen. Next slide, please. But there are hurdles. There are hurdles preventing the community from financing the growth ahead in the Kawartha Lakes. As critical infrastructure, the foundation needs support during our startup years. We also need help connecting donors who wish to fund the community but cannot do so. And finally, we need a long-term plan because we have a lot of growth ahead of us. We need to speed up our sustainability through the creation of a fund between the foundation and the City of Kawartha Lakes. And this brings me to my ask of you today. We are seeking a 3-year operating support of $250,000. Allow me to explain. We were established in late November 2019. Our foundational years should have seen an operational setup with a permanent structure, the attraction of endowment funds, which would have made us sustainable because we earn a very small levy for fund administration, and that is 2%. And that would finance our operating. But the pandemic occurring within months has started, of us starting our organization, had us pivoting to the critical work of supporting a region in crisis. Most of our funds became flow-through because the community needed that, because the city needed that of us. So here we are, 4 years in, hiring the first permanent staff, entering true startup operation. We are in delicate years, and we need your support. This brings me to ask number 2. I'm still 3S. We are seeking to formalize a process for working with the municipality to facilitate the flow of private and corporate donations to non-qualified donees. We've done this in the past, right? We've transferred over $70,000 through the municipality to accelerate municipally endorsed projects and other disbursements as recently as spring 2023. While there is precedent, this is one-offs. This is not an established process that will accommodate the growth of philanthropy. A process might include documentation between fund holders, the foundation, and the municipality, as well as procedures and disbursement through finance departments. But let me underscore the importance of this arrangement for our growth ahead. The largest donations are the ones associated with tax receipting. In the Income Tax Act, registered charities can issue tax receipts, but nonprofits cannot. I'd like to say it's easy to collect, but it's hard to disperse. You know, who we grant money to, who we disperse to, can only be directed towards qualified donees. The regulations have changed a little bit, but for most charities, they can only disperse to qualified donees. This includes other charities or government bodies like schools or municipalities. Now, if you're a nonprofit, you're classified as a non-qualified donee and you cannot issue tax receipts. This means you cannot access larger donations that comes with tax receipting. You do not qualify for grants that come from private foundations who must disperse to a charity, unless you have a fund with a community foundation, who can work with the municipality on projects that meet community needs. Together, we can unlock the flow of funding to help the community invest back in the community. And if you have a 50-50 grant, nonprofits can't easily match without tax receipting. So I'm asking you for ask number 2 to help me level the playing field and take the precedent, and let's make it official. Now ask number 3. We're looking to speed up our path to sustainability. Other municipalities have working relationships with their community foundations. 90% of the communities in Canada have access to a community foundation. Now, at minimum, we would like to see a sizable endowment fund with us from which we would charge a small levy 2%, when pooled together allows us to fund the very expensive tool sets that is needed for all our fund partners. When you hold a fund with us, you double your impact because you support our growth and our ability to serve the community and nonprofit sector. As Mark said, we have injected $1 million since we started the Community Foundation, and we want you to trust us like our fund holders do. We also want to explore how we can inject our expertise into granting and funds management, from which we can charge an appropriate administration fee for the value given. For other community foundations, that value exchange can include finding grantees, accepting and adjudicating applications, sitting on committees, administering fund grant cycles, and understanding if grants are working. We can bring an outside influence to your granting efforts. We can bring the perspectives of a charity supporting a nonprofit sector with deep connection to hyper-local community needs. And those are my 3 asks today. Thank you for listening. I'd like to welcome your questions at this time.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to receive the presentation and to refer it to the budget for 2024 as a decision unit? Councillor McDonald, Councillor Smeaton. Any questions? Councillor Perry.
Not a question, but for the record, I'll be recusing myself from the vote. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. All in favor? And that passes. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank all the presenters who came tonight, and they will go as decision units in this year, in the 2024 budget, and will be deliberated as was suggested before. I think the first date is November 28th. Thank you. We're now going to move into a section. We have some people who signed up online. We'll take care of them, and then the folks in the audience who signed the sheet, we will give you your time to speak to the 2024 budget. And before we do that, we'll take a 5-minute break. Okay, folks. Our first public deputation is online. We have Mr. Mike Grote speaking on behalf of Sue Lambert. Mr. Grote is in attendance by Zoom. He has 5 minutes. And if you would confine your remarks to the 2024 budget. Thank you. Whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Thank you. And good evening, everybody. My name is Mike Grote, and I live at 29 Lakewood Crescent, Bob Cajun. This is a 22-unit condo building that was built in 2016, and I have now lived at this location for 3.5 years. I'm speaking tonight to provide support to resurface Mill Street, Lakewood Crescent to Marina Drive, and River Park Drive. A petition was submitted previously by Sue Lambert, who's also on this call tonight, and received at the regular council meeting on August 29th, where a resolution was adopted for the resurfacing to be considered in the 2024 capital budget process. The petition had 171 signatures, and pictures were provided at that time. Our understanding is that the road improvements are currently scheduled for 2026. This timing may have been acceptable at one time, but unfortunately demographics and usage patterns have changed. This timeline needs to be revisited and moved forward. The roads in question are very busy with both vehicle traffic and pedestrian walkers. The roads service a large and growing community consisting of Edgewater condos, Forward Pool, Riverview Park, Port 32 with 400 homes, our condo building of 22 units, and within the last year, a new 48 condo townhome development. At times, there is also heavier truck traffic to the warehousing facility located at the corner of Lakewood and Mill Street. The growing residential base has also led to an increase in online shopping deliveries. In total, there is a very high concentration of residents and visitors with the associated vehicle and pedestrian traffic. When I first moved here, the road was not in great shape, but with the development of Port 32 Encore, due to all the heavy construction vehicles, it has progressively gotten worse. As Pat Warren previously referred to it in the past, it is one big pothole. A few times a year, the city patches the potholes, but unfortunately that isn't a permanent solution, and I feel this is just throwing money away. Based on our weather, rain and snow, along with associated winter plowing and street sweeping, the patches don't last very long, and there are now sections of the road that are more patches than original road material. In some areas, there are holes in the road with no apparent support underneath, and I fear this could lead to the road collapsing. There is a lot of vehicle traffic that must navigate many potholes and dips in the roads. It isn't good for the vehicle suspensions, and unfortunately leads to a growing safety concern with cars swerving to avoid the potholes. Pedestrian walkers must continually look around to avoid the cars, but also must continually look down to avoid stepping into a pothole. It is not safe. I would respectfully request that the resurfacing of these roads be moved into the 2024 budgeting cycle. Hopefully Marshall Homes contributed in some way to improve the roads, because I believe the heavy equipment used for the new Port 32 development contributed to the rapid deterioration of the roads in question. Thank you for your time and understanding.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to receive the deputation? Councillor Warren, seconder. Councillor Perry. Any questions for the deputant? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's passed. Thank you very much for your time tonight. Moving on, our next deputation is from Paul Balfour, and he's also in attendance by Zoom. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Balfour.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors. I appreciate this time. I'm kind of humbled after some of the presentations I've seen, but mine is a very simple situation. I've been living on the Hemlock Drive just north of Burnt River for over 40 years, since 1980. And I've seen the growth. I've seen the changes. Our road is being, is always been fairly rough over the years. However, it seems like the last 10 years, it just got exceptionally bad. I've been complaining to the road supervisor for several years now, with some success off and on, but very little for the most part. Found out we have customer service, which helped out a lot. They gave me a lot of guidance, which led me to Pat Warren, who's been incredibly helpful through this whole process of trying to get things moving. In fact, she's managed to fix up Hemlock, and a large part of it, by getting gravel put down. Our road was completely washed out. Springtime, it was underwater. Culverts were collapsed. And like the gentleman said before, we have to zigzag to get through. So Hemlock has been, for the most part, improved. But the worst part of our whole area is at Burnt River Road and Pinery, and also the intersection of Hemlock Drive and Pinery. This road is used by probably around 100 cottagers and residents. These corners are so bad that you have to idle or break through your way to get through the intersection. I've had a meeting with Chris Porter, and who's in charge of the road works in the area, and with Rob Peel. Both of them has told me, these corners, you cannot do any more maintenance on them. They're beyond repair. They're waiting for someday to have our road paved and get this problem resolved. I understand that might be 2025 budget, but the biggest problem we're facing today in the neighborhood is there's over 30 retirees in the community that I'm aware of that their biggest concern is emergency vehicles. I'll give you an example, personal example. 2 years ago, I had a stroke from the COVID vaccine. I was fortunate enough to get to the hospital within the hour. All doctors and nurses said, "You are so lucky that you got here within an hour." Every minute counts. I've lost part of my vision, and it has changed my life to a certain degree. And so I know the importance of time. Right now, the emergency vehicles can't get through our street in an emergency fashion. So that is our biggest concern in the area. We also have a wheelchair passenger in the area who has to painfully go through this road, bouncing off the sides of the van and all over there. He has been in a wheelchair for his whole life, and here he has to go through this painful process of going in and out. It is unfair. I'm sure anybody in this room, if they had a child that was being wheelchaired for their whole life and had to go through this, I'm sure this road would have been repaired a long time ago. So all we're asking is that you consider getting these two corners repaired as soon as possible. I'm sure it's not a big budget because it's only two main intersections, probably 1,000 square or 1,200 feet of road, that if it could be paved and resolved, there's a good chance you could save a life, or at least make somebody happier going in and out of their property. So, I've just been listening to people for the longest time. Pat knows I have been the one that's been taking the grunt of the complaints locally to make it easy on, basically Doug has received emails and Pat to try to keep things a little calm, but everybody wants to get involved here and start emailing Doug and Pat. And I don't think this needs to go that far. And everybody is complaining about the road, the cost of automotive repairs, because the road is so bad, it has caused a lot of things. I've personally lost a rim, and through the cold winters when you drive around with cold shocks, one of my shocks blew, which cost me over $1,200. So I'm just giving you an idea. This road just needs to be repaired. I've been here for almost over 45 years, and I've never seen the road so bad, and I can't understand why we get treated so bad for an area that all these residents have been paying taxes for tens of or lots of decades, and all we're asking is our road to be safe and secure for the residents and emergency vehicles. It's just a simple request. If you would help us out, it would be appreciated. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your deputation tonight, and it's being noted by the clerks and will be taken into consideration. Can I have a motion to receive the deputation? Councillor Warren, seconded by Councillor Yeo. Questions for the deputant? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. That's passed. We'll move to our next deputant, who is in the council chambers, and that would be Mr. David Rappaport. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name is David Rappaport. I'm relatively new to Kawartha Lakes. I'm an adjunct professor of sociology at Trent University. I teach on both campuses in Oshawa and in Peterborough. I came here to talk about something. Actually, my deputation is going to be very simple, but it's also extremely complex. I came to talk about the Healthy Environment Plan, which is a special project of the budget. And a budget, as you well know, is more than a projection of expenses and revenues. It's also a statement of priorities. And climate change is clearly, certainly in my view, a priority. We lived through a summer of hell, if I can use that expression, where the climate catastrophe became much more apparent, much more obvious with the forest fires out west. I think at one point we had 1,200 forest fires in Canada. About 500 or 600 were out of control. And we could talk about other aspects of climate change, but you're familiar with the studies that come out of the Intergovernmental Panel on climate change. We're into it now. We're right into it. I think what could Kawartha Lakes do? I think the argument that I sometimes hear that if you're small and you're not really a very large emitter of fossil fuel emissions, it doesn't really matter that much. I think that's a false argument. I think everybody has something, to contribute, to our fight against climate change. And when I look at the Healthy Environment Plan, the one that was released by this council in 2019, that made me feel very positive. That made me feel very good. I understand it hasn't been really implemented. I also understand that it's in the process of being revisited. I can see that in the budget, and thank you for that. I think we could take some very meaningful steps with retrofits, with education, encouraging developers to produce green projects, renewable energy generation, transition of the municipal fleet to zero emission cars, and so on. So, and to hire somebody, to do it. I understand that's been in the works for a few years as well. So I'm just adding my voice to something that's already there. You're familiar with it. I wanted to add my voice from the community. I'm with an organization called Seniors for Climate Action Now. We're running around doing this kind of thing, and I would urge your council to move forward on the Healthy Environmental Plan. I think it's crucial. I think it'll certainly address one of the major issues in our lives. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for coming tonight. I get a motion to receive the deputation. Deputy Mayor Richardson, Councillor Smeaton. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank
All
you
in favor? And that's passed.
Thank you.
We'll now move to the sign-up sheet that was done outside and picked up at 6:45. And the first deputant will be William Denby. You have 5 minutes. Again, if we can keep our remarks to the 2024 budget.
Yes, thank you, your mayor and councillors. I've reviewed the budget and I've looked at it. I don't think you're aware of what's been going on over at Tribute Homes, where they've moved, I would think, close to, well, they do 100 loads an hour on our highway over there, and they do down Country Lane to Ron Peel's gravel pit. We informed them that they're removing our ancestral remains. So what we're going to ask council very clearly, and I have a letter here I'm going to serve you with, $500 million be set aside in your budget for damages. We have all the pictures, we have videos. There was no archaeological study done. Your council approved a report for Tribute Homes to start over there. I don't think they did not do their phase 2, phase 4 archaeological study. They have not done any environmental studies. They're on the south end of the property that was farmland that is approximately at least a foot deep in topsoil, and they've scraped it right down to the clay. They're hauling trucks that we've reported to the MTO with not covering their tarps. So I'm hoping you have, and you've secured hundreds of thousands of dollars in damages that they're doing to our roads from Tribute Homes in advance, because they're going to remove all that topsoil on 327 acres because they don't need a drop of it. They don't put topsoil. They put down pavement, or they put down stone as lawn. We also have another issue that we're going to deal with. We want to make sure you have $200 million set aside in your budget for disguised expropriation this municipality has been using on property owners. And just to make it very clear, I am Chief William J. Denby. I have 15 of my band council members that are all First Nation, and we have 7 non-First Nation members that have been acknowledged in international courts that we do own Kawartha Lakes. We are filing, just to let you know, in the Federal Court of Justice, 10 Armour Street in Toronto, to start proceedings to take back possession of our land because of all the damage that you people have done to it over the last 242 years. I would advise you that this is a land, all the land treaties that were done, this land was never surrendered to the British. It was taken by military action in 1783. They slaughtered our ancestors. That's why you find them all over Kawartha Lakes. And my deputy chief is going to explain to you where our burial grounds are. He knows exactly where they all are. All right? So we're just advising council to make sure you have approximately $700 million in this budget set aside for compensation. Thank you.
Can I get a motion to receive the deputation, please? Councillor Joyce. Seconder? Councillor Perry. Any questions for the deputant? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's passed.
Thank you. We will forward we have about, I would say, 15 to 18 hours of videos of the trucks being transported out of Tribute Home to 3 dump sites. Marquis is over on Highway 36.
Your deputation.
I'm just letting you know.
Thank you.
I'm just letting you know there's more information coming your way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next deputant is Doug Shaw. Again, you have 5 minutes, and I'd ask you to keep your remarks to the 2024 budget.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council, and members of the public. I'm a farmer in the area, and I'm very concerned about what's going on right now. I saw this go in Markham, and I've talked to this council and to the staff many times. I was a general contractor in Markham as well as farmed. And I saw what the development did to Markham. Markham and Stouffville and area only had one hospital. That hospital was challenged. Okay, and the developers, Romont Homes, Flato Developments, a number of very large developers never put one dime into infrastructure and never put one dime into the hospital. That is happening here. We have a huge infrastructure that needs repair. We have no sewage treatment plants for future development. Our roads are 10 to 15 years behind in repair. And here we dare to move forward with development on the basis that we're going to make $300 million from Mr. Ford, dangling a carrot in front of us with the Strong Mayors Act. Now, I fail to see the challenge, okay, that anybody could put together to see how this puzzle is going to fit. I'm a businessman. I'm a farmer. I put seed in the ground with help, okay, with other people. We all work together, and we see as a person that is a businessman. I don't see that this works. We have a huge area, 3,400 square miles of infrastructure and one hospital. That one hospital is Ross Memorial Hospital. Now you're asking for a development that far challenges that hospital. I've gone in to have INR done on a blood test and waited 12 hours. That's not acceptable. That's not acceptable. Okay, our doctors are not here. And I asked this council to reconsider moving forward on development because I've seen the devastation of how a municipality is challenged. People are on fixed incomes. People come here, okay, because they want an easier life. They don't want this hustle bustle where there's gridlock. They don't want all these apartment buildings like what there is in Stouffville now from Flato Developments. Flato Developments ruined Stouffville. And guess what? He didn't put one dime into the hospital. Farmers are important. Okay? In the future, and I'm telling you this and it's a fact, 319 acres disappear every day in development in Ontario. Those numbers go to 116,435 acres per year of choice farmland disappear in Ontario. That's food sources for our future. Now you add that up to 10 years, there's 1,164,350 acres of choice farmland destroyed for our future with absolutely no thought ahead. We have a bridge in Fenelon, okay, that needs repair. Now, we did a study on that, supposedly. Bill and I did a study on it. We sat with a coffee and a lawn chair for about 15 minutes. And you know what? We figured it all out. There's too much, it's too busy. Okay, and you're going to try and put 800 houses in
Get
there?
you to wrap up, please.
Anyway, I'm gonna say one thing, and one thing only in the future. Have you eaten today? Every farm matters. Thank you.
Any questions for the deputant? Seeing none, I get a motion to receive the deputation. Councillor McDonald, Councillor Ashmore. All in favor? Thank you, and that's done. Next deputant is Gwen Denby.
Hi, I'm Gwen Denby. Thank you, Mayor Emsley and Council, for letting me voice my concerns tonight. If you haven't really noticed, there has been a lot of homeless people living in the city of Kawartha Lakes. In the past years, we have had a lot of homeless, and we have brought them into our home to help them out. But as you realize, there's more and more people living on the streets. At Tent City, behind the mall, there's hundreds of them. There's a lot of people that can't afford housing. They can't afford nothing. They are just living in a tent or in a box. My concerns are, is there any place in the budget, or do you have any money set aside to help the homeless people to have a safe place to stay besides a place called home? And is there anything in the budget for them to have a warming station, a place for shower, food, laundry, or anything like that to help them out? Or is there any place for them to get food besides the food bank, or to help the food banks get them more food, as they rely on going to the food banks to survive? Such as the seniors, there's homeless, there's working poor, there's families, and people on assistance that can't even afford to buy their groceries in the stores. My concerns is there any money in the budget to help these people out, as they are not garbage? They need a little bit of respect. And that's all I'm asking. Thank you.
Thank you. The answer to your question is there is money in the budget for some of those things. Certainly, one of the things is a warming and a cooling center that is in there, and certainly our social services people are working with a number of other agencies to try and help the homeless people that are out there, and also looking at affordable housing and trying to do something about affordable housing in order to alleviate that problem.
Okay.
It's obviously a much larger problem than just Kawartha Lakes, but we are trying to do our bit.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
deputation. I have a motion to receive that deputation, please. Councillor Smeaton, Councillor Perry. All in favor? And that's passed. Our next deputant is Jim Greenside.
Sorry, he had to leave. So take him off. Sorry.
Thank you. Followed Bob Newham.
Bob couldn't be here either. We intended to, but the weather. Thank you.
Thank you. Greg Wade.
Same problem. Weather.
Dave Wright.
Same problem. Sorry. They all intended to be here.
Weldon Hashi.
Yes, Weldon is here.
You have 5 minutes, and we are restricting comments to the 2024 budget.
Thank you. I spent the first 11 years of my life growing up in Omemee. I feel like I've come full circle. I've just recently moved back here. I'm just starting to get to know William and Gwen Denby. They've given me an opportunity to try and get my life back. I ran a business, a heating and air conditioning business for 20 years in Keswick and Georgina. And I broke my knee, went through a divorce. I gave my wife, my stepdaughters everything. In this great country of ours, this is the stitches that I had. My knee was separated. Because I gave the house away, I had nowhere to live. And the hospitals will not do surgery if you don't have anywhere to recover. And in this great country, when you do not work for somebody, when you're self-employed, you can't get unemployment or welfare. They wrapped my leg, they wouldn't do surgery, they threw me in a homeless shelter, and I've been struggling to get back on my feet. And I thank Gwen and Will Denby, because they're giving me a chance to get my life back. I've been struggling for the last 5 years. I'm a construction worker. I really don't know what's happening. I've been picking up odd jobs. Every person, every citizen in Canada, as I've heard, is about 3 to 4 paychecks away from being homeless. I see the homeless mounting every day. I was homeless, and I'm terrified that I'm going to end up homeless again. I've made it my passion to create affordable housing, and I spoke about my dream and my goals with William Denby to build affordable housing because of my HVAC background. But I literally was tossed in a shelter, and my father taught me one thing: if you're going to take a job, no matter what, if you don't like it, as long as you take that job, if you accept that job, you do it to the best of your abilities. I had my first job at 6 years old at Morrison's Restaurant in Omemee, if anybody's old enough to remember that place. He said, I walked in, I said, I need a job. He said, why? I said, because we can't afford to eat. I've worked 2 jobs my whole life. My father taught me, if you work hard, you will amount to something. You will be successful. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but I work hard. I can't even close my hands. Mr. Morrison said, you can't even reach the sink. What are you going to do? I said, I'll wash dishes. He said, you can't even reach the sink. I said, I can't reach the sink at home. I said, they put a chair and 2 phone books so that I can reach. My first job at 6, I worked for Dickie D Ice Cream. I delivered Sun Papers. I've had 2 jobs my entire life, and I'm broke, and I was homeless, and this government did nothing for me but threw me out like a piece of trash. I'm just new here. I don't know what to say because I'm a construction worker. I'm not a politician, but I want to thank the Denbys, but I want to know what this city council is going to do. You can't see the homeless mounting. More and more people. I work my ass to the bones. I can't wake up in the morning without a hot pad to get rid of the aches and the pains. I worked 2 jobs my whole life. I don't even know what to say to you, but the advice my father gave, if you accept a job, please do it to the best of your abilities. And I just ask, what can this city council do to make a conscious effort for the community? Thank you.
Thank you. There are efforts being made, and there certainly are people and other agencies who are working with the homeless here and trying to improve things and trying to find a solution to the affordable housing problem. But it is a very difficult nut to crack, and we're doing what we can. Is it enough? Probably not, but I can tell you efforts are being made. And I have a motion to receive the deputation, please. Deputy Mayor Richardson, Councillor Ashmore. All in favor? And that's passed. Is Steve L'Esperance here?
Well, thank you. First of all praise goes to the Most High. All right, thank you for having me here. My name is Steve Lesbrance. I am a property owner in Omimi, and I'm a Kawartha First Nations Band Council member. I'm also a commandment keeper and an apple of his eye, a chosen son. I am in the ministry of the head of the Canadian Assembly of the International Straightway Truth with Pastor Charles Dowell. And first of all, I'd like to say the kingdom of heaven is at hand. A bit about my background. I'm in Ojibwe in Red River, Manitoba, where my family records were burnt, but that does not say I'm not native of this land. I also have a family which is Japanese. My stepfather was Masumi Mitsui, was a well-decorated sergeant in World War I, where he led the Japanese-Canadian troops to win the Battle of Vimy Ridge, something which not much talked about or taught in schools. In World War II, when World War II started, the government of Canada threw him and his family into concentration camps and confiscated their farm and all the belongings in Port Coquitlam, BC. That actually is quite known. And this was after the government had promised they would be kept and returned to them.
Mr. Lesperance, we're here to talk about the City of Kawartha Lakes 2024 budget.
Yes,
your
getting to that.
history is fascinating, but
yeah,
thank
I'm
you.
just building my character of what I had to go through and where we're going at this time with this budget. And also, as this is what happens at a larger side of government. You're dealing with Canada, and then at the municipal level. So we want to bring it back down to municipal level. As talking about, I was a child in Hamilton, and we were expropriated from our home on York Street, and everything was thrown out, and we were thrown out. Now, I'm speaking today about the concerns of whether or not we are acting in truth, which I'm speaking to the 2024 budget of the Kawartha Lakes. Okay, and all this would happen to me. I don't wish that upon anyone else, but we got to watch where we're going and what we need to do with our budget that will help us along where we need to go. So before I go on, I want to know that I attended yesterday's council meeting right here, and while I was here in City Kawartha Lakes, one of the officers came to my place and walked all over my well-marked private property in Omimi, and they left their business card there, and it was very well signed private property. What's happening here, all of us we have attended these meetings, being ID'd and tracked, having our property visited, while they know we're not at home. They have no business walking on my land. I read the Municipal Act. And according to the Act, you have no jurisdiction over my private property, as far as I could see, unless you show me anywhere else. Public, yes, but private, no. And it's in your own Act. So, okay, we must be correcting this. And now I'm hearing the city is being run as a corporation in a way of the public and private partnership with a POG primer, as if you all received. And that this is all native land by what Bill is expressing. So what is the truth here? Don't we want to be acting in truth, like all of us here? I would advise that you do all the right thing, because Jesus is coming back pretty soon, and judgment, and nobody wants to face him with blood on their hands. So I have the interest in improving, restoring our elected officials right here, all in the ethics, dealing in peace, order, and good governance. And I'm sure we all do, okay? And dealing with this budget. So making sure that we go walking forwards properly. So you received all the POG primer, and it was sent from Angel, as well as Sheila McFarland. So for me and my host, I'm going to serve the one most Elohim. So choose you this day who you'll serve, God or Mammon. And that's what we need to do. We got to make sure that we're dealing with these taxation. And I don't want to be confused here. We want to make sure that we're all working in the proper way together. So let's go on the right side and in proper governance. So that's what I have to say. Shalom. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I get a motion to receive the deputation, please. Councillor Perry, Councillor Warren. All in favor? And that's passed. Our next speaker is Angel Godso. You have 5 minutes, and if you would confine your remarks to the 2024 budget.
I will try. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and honorable councillors. I'd like to speak about the proposed budget this evening as a friend and a neighbor. Probably most of you know my background. I've run for the Green Party. I ran here municipally as well. And I really want to recognize the work that went in to the budget. It's very in-depth and goes into a lot of the areas that we want to work on through the next year and beyond. I want to thank Mr. Taylor for his introduction to it. It was very informative. While I recognize all that, I have to say that I came last year to speak to last year's budget, and I looked for some very specific things. When I conceded to the tax hike from last year, I really wanted to see these things implemented this year, and I didn't. I'm going to just name 3 of them: fiscal responsibility, true sustainable development, and public input. And I really haven't seen those things. I'm going to try to be within my time and demonstrate how. Okay. Speaking on the first, fiscal responsibility, running a deficit of $11 million saddles our area and our children with an unsurmountable burden. On your website and during the presentation tonight, you likened it to a small mortgage. It's not that. That is not a very comparable metaphor. The interest on $111 million is just mind-boggling when you think about it compounded and over the years, with the fact that there's no provision in the, I don't know what the acronym is, a future long-term FL, whatever, for making this good, for paying that off. Before amalgamation, it was unacceptable to run a budget at a deficit. So I just can't cotton to this being an acceptable way to run our municipality. Okay. Aside from that, committing to accelerated population growth. Sorry, that's page 3. Okay, so running it at the deficit is not fiscally responsible. Sorry, I'm going to go to 2. My notes are all over the place. True sustainable development. I'm just going to go from my heart, not from my notes. What we see here in City of Kawartha Lakes, in my opinion, is not true sustainable development. The building practices are not green building practices. We have an overburdened policing, paramedic, hospital, housing, our waste management and sewage are all running at overcapacity, to say the least, about our social service network. I mean, it's everything is overcapacity, and to ask for more people to be coming in at an expedited rate, it's just irresponsible. It's not common sense at all. Before we get a handle on the infrastructure to meet the needs of our present population. Back to the fiscal burden. A lot of that debt was incurred from provincial programs that we didn't sign up for. We're not I think if you took a tally of most of the population, we're not on board for these UN agendas. They've been proven detrimental by our several members of the federal Conservative Parliament. They're trying to exit these World Health Organization agreements and the UN agendas that have been proven detrimental. Are you going to ask me to wind up? Yeah. Okay. Okay, let's get down to the public input, okay? I'm not seeing it. Our media is gone. That's going to be a huge, our media talking about our weekly newspaper. Oh my gosh. Okay. Putting out a survey that has a multiple question of issues that are already being implemented and saying, which ones do you want? We're doing all these things already. Like, what's your favorite? It's just, that's not public input. And putting a notice in the newspaper once for a very important public meeting on the rural zoning bylaw restructure, that's not getting people involved. It's not garnering public input. I don't see those three things happening. I can't justify in this terrible environment of economic environment a increase of 4.6% of the taxes. I'm not feeling it. I'm really sorry, and that's what I have to say.
Thank you. I get a motion to receive the deputation. Councillor Perry, Councillor Ashmore. All in favor? And that's passed. Thank you. Our next deputant is Ryan Kondo.
Hi, how are you? So this is all about taxes going up every year, right? This is what you guys are looking for? You're looking for more money from the public to get more infrastructure and do everything you're doing? People are going homeless all the time, and all the money just keeps going up and up. But every year you guys ask for more taxes. And for what? For bigger stuff we can't do with what we do with the money that you guys have now for the budget? It just has to keep going up and up and up and up. And you're raising everybody's property taxes that shouldn't do every year. Like, people are struggling now everywhere. Like, everybody is struggling. Because taxes are too high, way too high. They shouldn't be that high, okay? Nobody needs to go to work just to survive. Like, well, I don't think we were put here to work and just to survive, right? Like, taxes are gone out of control out of this whole country. And to raise them up every year and just keep doing it, you're just putting more people into homeless. You're putting more people, like, you're stressing everybody out. It's not something that you should be looking to do. You should be looking to help out, see how we can figure out to cut the costs on a lot of stuff so you don't raise taxes up, and try to get people back in to have their houses and money, and that they don't have to go and work 3 jobs to make ends meet, right? Taxes are something that should be coming down, not going up. Like, nobody likes, I work too much, and I only do it because I have to. I'd rather be out fishing somewhere instead of working my ass off paying for taxes. And it's not fair to everybody to pay taxes, and it's a public meeting. Well, I'm sure you guys all talk to each other all the time, right? So if it's a public meeting, you should have the lights out on the parking lot so everybody kind of knows that you guys are here, and having them off in the parking lot. And there's not really that many public here, but you guys seem to talk immense about yourself a lot more than the public is talking. So I don't know how it's a public meeting, and you're not really talking about taxes. You're talking about building more stuff, and you're talking about like how much more money you need. Well, taking it from the public is what you shouldn't be doing. You should figure out whatever you're doing with yourselves and try to figure out how to lower that. Raising it up and putting all these people more in debt is not something that I would be doing. As a small town, I lived here my whole life, but every year you guys raise taxes. Well, you're gonna have more and more problems. There's a lot more crime in the city. There's a lot more bad stuff that's happening in the city, way more than there ever was, because of how high the money is. Like, look at the house it cost. Like, go rent a house right now. Look how much that is. Who can afford that, right? If you're working for minimum wage, nobody's gonna afford that. It's way too much. They want like $2,300 for a 2-bedroom apartment. Minimum wage, you don't make that kind of money. So you just want to raise it up higher. That's not the solution. The solution is trying to get the tax to come down, right? So you got to work within your means. Because raising it up is not fixing anybody's problem. It's just making it worse. So we need to figure out how to get it to come down, not go up. Because if you want more crime in the city, you want more bad stuff coming in the city, it's going to come because you're putting people out of their houses. So raising taxes is not where we should be. We should be trying to get taxes to come down, not go up. And there's a lot more bad stuff that's going to happen because you're putting more people out on the street. There's a lot more crime that's going to happen. There's a lot more everything that's going to happen. As in now, like, I didn't lock my doors for a long time, but now I have to lock my doors because of how many people are out here that are homeless and they need money. But raising the taxes up isn't fixing that problem. It's making it way worse. So,
get you to wrap up, please.
Well, that's all I need to say.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. May I get a motion to receive the deputation? Councillor Smeaton, Deputy Chair, Deputy Mayor Richardson. All in favor? And that's passed. The last person we have on the list is Jeff Armitage. You have 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. Thank you for having me, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm not going to speak at all on what I originally intended on speaking on. After talking to this man, I'm going to speak on something different. Okay? If I can do it.
We're here to talk about the budget.
It's about the budget. Sir, we got to look at it. And we got to work together because you councillors can do it. We don't need a 4.53 or 4.6% increase. We can do it. We got enough skill set here. I've listened for 20 or 30 hours over the last 3 weeks to every individual. I can name everybody here. We can do it. But we got to do it with community effort, sir. We can. And we got to do it with the councillors. And we got to bring the power back to the councillors and the mayor. Sir, are you a member of the GCOM? Can you answer that tonight?
I have no idea what the G Club is.
It's the Global Governance of Mayors, the Covenant. No?
Never heard of it.
Okay. I sat here and I watched everything occur over the last 3 weeks. And I'll be back because it's intriguing me to find out how much better we can do. The citizens, the councillors, we got to get together. And we got to learn to love each other and work with each other without indifferences and division. And stop the hatred. And bring back the unity. You know, even now I think back, I grew up, my father was a councillor and a reeve. And he died 42 years ago. But I still have what it takes in me. The truth and ethics to bring back these communities and make this gentleman pay the proper amount of tax for his income so he can thrive and raise a family in a healthy environment. I mean, I go on and I listen to these big contracts where we're sending monies to companies like WSP, global consulting firms with 96,300 employees tied to the UN, the G7, G20, World Food Bank, World Health Organization, World Economic Forum. Why are we spending this money when we can do it right here? We've got a great skill set in this community. I'd like to bring that back, and I think we can do it. I think we can work together as a team and stop the division I see on a daily basis. I'm sorry for ramping this up. I didn't plan on speaking this way if my life depended on it. But I listened to Human Resources. I think her name was Mrs. Faber. I got her business card, and I'd love to go visit her. And this fella that wanted to build these boxes, I'll do it. The garden boxes for $530 each, I'll do it. Either fund it or do it myself. It's those kind of community things that we got to bring back and give back to the citizens from the heart and stop this excessive spending. I'm sorry I'm ramping this up, but I have to get it out. It's been hard watching people suffer and things that have happened, and I won't get into my life history. It's good and it's bad. But I know one thing, my heart's in the right spot. And I've seen it with a lot of people in this country. We're in a beautiful country and it's state of disrepair right now. We shouldn't even have a debt. If you want to look at the Municipal Act, we're not even supposed to have a debt. And we don't need to have a debt. We can bring this back and bring prosperity right here where it matters. It's nothing to do with what I planned on speaking on tonight, sir. But I hope it registers a bit. Thank you kindly for having me, allowing me to speak.
Thank you. I get a motion to receive the deputation, please. Councillor MacDonald, Councillor Ashmore. All in favor? Thank you. Is there anyone who hasn't spoken tonight who's in the room who would like to speak? No? In that case, we'll move on in the agenda. I'm sorry? The councillors get paid a salary, and that's, pardon? Their salary is increased on a yearly basis that at the rate of either 2% or the consumer price index, whichever is greater. So the highest raise they will get is 2%. I'm not sure what a councillor's salary is now. It's around $52,000. And the report is public. You can look online and find out. Thank you. Okay. So I need a confirming bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the special council meeting of November 8th, 2023. Councillor Perry, Councillor Warren. All in favor? And that's passed. Everybody going out and driving tonight, please be careful. We don't want any accidents out there. We don't want anybody to get hurt. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Councillor Joyce, Councillor MacDonald. All in favor? Thank you, and thank you all for coming tonight.